recording. Art, I've given you permission to record.
Okay, I'm just putting my phone. Okay, I'm recording.
Okay. Okay, I closed the door for the cat. She seems to know exactly when the shear starts. So I've closed the door and she's trying to scratch on it.
So she's not going to get any further merit, but that's fine by me.
She can hear it. Okay, so I'm going to do the brocha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishan b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'asuk b'divrei Torah. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'filu tzivcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzenu v'tzeitzeihem beit Yisrael. Kulani yodea shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai lemei Torah le'emo Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'cha banu minkonam v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Okay, so
Amen.
We're doing this share for the refuah of Yehudit Bat Zipporah, which is Ronnie Lurie's aunt. She's in ICU, and she's not in a fantastic state at all. So please God, in the merit of this, she makes a refuah shalema. And in the merit of this, may we all keep well, you guys included, you my good friends. So let's get to the Mishnah Berurah now. To so, in Mishnah Berurah, section 178, paragraph 36, we're discussing the rules of non-bread and non-mizanot foods. Okay? So fruit, vegetables, meat, fish, drinks, etc., where the minute there's a shehakola, adama, and a ha'etz. That's what we're discussing at the moment. We're not discussing mizanot, and we're not discussing hamotzi. Okay. And these things are different because their eating is not considered to continue in another space. As one leaves that place, the meal is over. So obviously it goes without saying, before you eat those things, you have to do a brocha rishona, which is the initial brocha, the before brocha. And therefore, if you leave the original place of eating and continue eating those foods elsewhere, you must make a new brocha rishona food on them. Okay, so in other words, you're eating there, then you're continually eating somewhere else. You must make a new brocha because the makom has changed. So if a person was eating eggs at home and you went to drop your kids at school, you lose the original share call. To continue eating whether at home or anywhere else, you'll have to make a new share call. Now we're going to discuss the brocha achrona, the after brocha, which is borei nefashot. With regards to the brocha achrona, the same as bread or mizanot still applies. So you should certainly bench before you leave if you were having this, and if you not this, if you were having bread or whatever. But if you were having any of these foods like fruits and meats, etc., you do the after brocha in the location where you're at. And please, guys, don't tell me that you don't have time to say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei nefashot rabot v'cheshonan al kama shebrata nefesh kol chai brocha elamim. How long did that take? 20 seconds. So there's no reason why you can't do the after brocha. If you finished, you're not going to eat any more of it. You must say the brocha achrona wherever you are. You don't have to come back. In other words, if you're still eating, you ate eggs at home, then you ate some eggs at the office, you do a new shakol. But the after brocha, you don't have to be to say it in the original place of eating because you just did a new brocha where you are. You redid the brocha. So where you are is where you say it. So if you eat eggs at home and leave to take the kids to school, you should say borei nefashot before you leave. But if you forgot to, if you didn't, say for example, you got a call at the school saying that and your mind left it, and you return to eat, whether back at home or you go to the office, you firstly make a new shakol, and then you do borei nefashot afterwards, wherever you are. If you won't eat any more eggs at all, you must make a borei nefashot before you leave. So as soon as you realize, even if you're like in the car, you can do it in the car. Are you with me? So while you're dropping the kids at school, you chap then you can do it. So if you ate an apple at home, 20 minutes later, you're at the gym and you realize you never said a borei nefashot. You can say the borei nefashot at the gym. Unlike bread, you need not go home to say it. Okay. So I'm telling you this. I used the gym example because I don't see many Haredi people going to gym, but we all dirty here. So obviously Rabbi Daniel Brody gave over the shir. It's a very nice succinct shir. And let's get started with the Gemara lesson immediately. Okay. What we're going to do, because we've got a lot of ground to cover, is we're going to leave questions to the end. I guarantee you when I go through it, and you let me just go through it quickly, it's going to make a lot more sense, and I'll add all the detail afterwards. So we don't have a lot of time. Okay. So the Mishnah states one is liable for damages only to properties that are not subject to the law of Me'ilah. In other words, if you own a property, etc. But anything that's subject to the law of Me'ilah, if somebody damages your article, they don't have to pay it. But then the Gemara draws an inference, because it says if it's only the law of Me'ilah that the Mishnah states must not apply in order that the damager be liable. What about property that is not subject to Me'ilah? In other words, one is liable for damage even though it's consecrated property. So what is it saying here? Is they're saying, hang on a second. Me'ilah is when you use consecrated items for private use, which you're not allowed to do. And if that's the case, and you're using it for private use, does that mean, it seems to imply that consecrated properties, you are subject to damage? And we learned before that the rabbi said, if you damage temple property, you don't have to pay. Rabbi Akiva says you do. It's just saying that the temple property doesn't have to pay you back if their ox damaged your ox. But according to this, it would seem that you have to pay for consecrated property. And the truth is you don't. Because what it does is it distinguishes between two different types of damage. It asks, who's this Tana that maintains the view? Rav Yochanan said the Mishnah refers to Kodashim Kalim and follows the opinion of Rav Yossi HaGlili, who maintains that Kodashim Kalim are considered the property of the owner. Okay, just in summary, we learned that there are two different types of offerings. There's offerings that are the most high, which is Kodshe Kodashim, and the most holy offerings, and that's the Chatas offering, the Ola offering, the Asham offering. Remember, these are offerings that have got such significance, but that it's the difference between kares and non-kares, between redemption and conviction. These are very serious things. So these are offerings of the Most High. So in that particular case, the minute you have designated verbally or in your mind that particular animal to be used as Kodshe Kodashim, the holy of holy offerings, you cannot derive any personal benefit from it. This is a different issue to sacrificial offerings of Kodashim Kalim, which is offerings of lesser holiness. So, for example, the Shalamim offering, the Bachor offering of the firstborn, and Maisa offering. So those are not as of higher value, and therefore they only become subject to divine service at the point at which they're sacrificed. Up until then, they're your property. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring a proof for it. So it says, as we learned in the Brisa, the Torah states in reference to one who swears falsely in denial of a monetary claim, if a person will sin and will commit a treachery against Hashem by lying to his fellow. So this verse comes to include Kodashim Kalim in the law of false oaths. For God, Kodashim Kalim are deemed the property of their possessor. These are the words of Rav Yossi HaGalili. So it's both. Why is it a treachery against Hashem? Because Hashem is waiting for you at the point where you're going to sacrifice the offering that is reserved for holy purposes. Okay, so therefore it's a treachery against Hashem. And it's a treachery against the fellow because until the time it's sacrificed, it still belongs to that individual. So this is a proof by Rav Yossi HaGalili to prove that it's actually considered the property of their possessor, the owner of the ox. Okay? And therefore, if your ox damages for Kodshem Kalim of another person, it's deemed the ox of his fellow, and you have to replace it. It's not like hitting the Kodshe Kodashim, the higher one, where you don't have to pay back for, because the term is when you're doing goring, if you damage the ox of your fellow. Okay, so far it should remain clear. There's two different categories. The Gemara asks, but we've learned in the Mishnah, if one betroths a woman with his portion of a sacrificial offering, whether with a portion of Kodshe Kodashim or with a portion of Kodashim Kalim. She is not betrothed. Okay, so we don't have an issue with regards to Kodshe Kodashim because we said that belongs to the consecrated service immediately upon dedication. So then we know you can't betroth a woman with it because it's not yours anymore. So the question is, if we hold by Rav Yossi HaGalili, why can't you, if it's still deemed to be your property, use the portion for Kodshem Kalim, in other words, the lesser offering, and betroth your woman with it? Because in other words, if you are saying that that's the case, either this particular Mishnah is not in accordance with Rav Yossi HaGalili, meaning Yossi Galili is of a different opinion to that particular Mishnah, or it's talking about a specific case. So Rav Aglili says that Kodshem Kalim are the property of their possessor, and therefore a betrothal performed with one's portion in Kodshem Kalim should be valid. Okay? So far, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there should be any questions. Any questions, guys? It's pretty straightforward.
Going back to the offerings, you said shlamim, and some of these offerings composed of a dove and flour.
No, Kev, it's not the subject of what we're dealing with. What I'm saying is, you know what, it's not about the animal you're sacrificing. Your question was great yesterday, because you said to me, but are certain animals reserved for certain sacrifices? And the proof is that a bechor is the firstborn. So that's a lower offering. That's a kodshem kalim. And an ox also gives birth. A sheep gives birth. So it's not about the animal. It's about your intent of doing the offering. Is it for one of these big things? Or is it for one of the minor ones where you're giving maisa, your tzedakah money, or you're giving the firstborn, or something like that, where the consequence is less severe? It could still be an ox, but the consequence is
yes.
So it's a good question.
I was getting confused.
No. It's a good question. So, but do you understand the concept of why you can't betroth a woman with it? Because the offerings that are most high, they're not yours. The minute you dedicated it, they belong.
Doesn't belong to you.
They're not yours. But the Kodashim Kalim seems a little bit of a question. Why? Because Rav Yossi HaGalili says it belongs to you. So therefore, why can't you betroth a woman with it? So either he doesn't agree with the Mishnah, or we have to find out maybe there's more information to learn. So we're going to learn this more information. Does that make sense? So one of the reasons why you, just as a matter of interest, why you can't, is because while it's in your. Okay, let's go to 12b2. We'll unpack this. So you may even say that the Mishnah's ruling is consistent with the view of Rav Yossi HaGalili. So when the Rav said that Kodshem Kalim are deemed the property of the possessor, it's only while the animal is still alive. It's only when the animal is still alive. Okay? But after its slaughter, even Rav Yossi HaGalili admits that it's no longer the property of the possessor. So he was saying, listen, it's your property while it's alive, so it's fine. We're talking about lesser offerings here. Kodashim Kalim. So it's your property, but the minute you sacrifice it, it belongs to the Most High. So even he agrees with that. So after its slaughter, Rav Yosef HaGalili admits that it's no longer the property of the possessor, for when they, the Kohanim and the owner, acquire their portions of the offering, it's from the table of the Most High that they acquire them. So let me explain it to you like this. Is that what happens is a certain portion, the blood goes on the altar. A certain portion of the animal is sacrificed on that altar. And then the breast and the right leg go to the Kohen, and some of the meat goes to the owner of that particular ox. And they acquire their portion. But even though it's theirs, it's not technically theirs. Let me explain to you why. It uses the term from the table of the Most High they can acquire them. So they're only allowed to eat it after the point that the sacrifice has occurred, and Hashem allows them, like a master that allows his servants to eat at the table from an ox that the master owns. In other words, the master feeds his servants, but the master actually owns the ox. It's not the servant's ox. It belongs to the master. The master is just kind enough to let the servants enjoy the ox. Does that make sense? So some of the portion that Hashem allows the Kohanim and the owner of the ox to partake in does not make it that persons, after animals been sacrificed, they're merely enjoying the benefit of it. And the proof of it is that they cannot touch that meat until the blood has been thrown on the altar and some of the meat has been thrown on the altar. So that's very, very straightforward. But we still have a question. What's the question? Is that what happens before the animal is sacrificed, right? When the animal is still alive. Because we're saying, hang on, if it belongs to the person while it's still alive, the cat's scratching at the door, no cranberry. While the animal's still alive, sorry, the cat is persistent. Sorry, guys. Okay, while the animal is still alive, can you hang on a sec, guys? Just give me a sec. Just put on pause. You need to behave, man.
Kevin, did you go for a run already?
Yeah, I came back like 10 minutes before the share.
How long was your run?
20 Ks.
Yes, sir. I get exhausted driving 20 Ks.
No, but I ran to Jaffa, and just before Batyam, looked at the ocean. It was fantastic. It's flat, you see. But it was hot. I couldn't get going earlier. Davened and no, it was fantastic.
Okay, you ready? Can I start recording again, Dan?
Yeah. All right, guys,
I'm recording again.
Let's get into it. Okay, so what we're saying is as follows. Is that while the animal is still alive, it's a question. Why? Because if there was a court case against that animal, you have to pay for damage to that animal because it's still considered your property. So why can't you then sell it in order to betroth the woman? It's either your property or it's consecrated property. Does that make sense while it's alive? It can't, in a way, be both. At the point at which you sacrifice the lesser offerings, it's the temple's property. So the reason why you can't is, for example, for a Bechor offering, which is the firstborn, that's not destined for you. It's destined for you to basically, if anybody damages it or you damage it, to replace it. But it's not destined for your use because that firstborn animal is destined for you to sacrifice at the point at which it will become consecrated. So it's already been allotted, even though if somebody damages that ox, they have to pay you back for it because you had the intent to sacrifice it. So at that particular point, that's fine. They have to make restoration. But you can't betroth a woman with it. Why can't you? It's not yours. That has to be dedicated as a firstborn animal for temple sacrifice. And it's this particular question that we ask on Rav Galili. Okay, so then he's going to discuss an issue that there seems to be a contradiction. So we've learned in another Mishnah, a Bechor may be sold by a Kohen in an unblemished state while it is alive, and in a blemished state, whether it is alive or after it has been slaughtered. And the Kohen may betroth a woman with it. So this seems to be a contradiction, right, to the previous brisa we learned. So there's obviously a factor coming into play here. Does that make sense? In other words, if the animal is unblemished while it is alive, the Kohen can sell it. If it's in a blemished state while it is alive, or after it has been slaughtered, the Kohen can also sell it, and he can betroth the woman with its proceeds or give it to her. I think it's more romantic that he doesn't give her a dead ox and he gets her a ring and he sells it. But that's a different issue of romance. But maybe they're not spoiled today like your average northern suburb Jewish girl. Maybe it was a little different there. Okay, so what we're seeing is two things. That we notice a term that if it's blemished, you're not going to be able to, what, guys? What do you think you're not going to be able to do with it?
Sacrifice it.
Correct. Why?
Because it's got a mum. It has to be perfect. It has to be. There can't be any blemishes in it.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's not acceptable. So,
Correct. So we can understand maybe it's suggesting that while it's in a blemished state, you're not going to be able to sacrifice it anyway. So then it would render it, maybe you can use it to betroth the woman with it. So that might make sense. So whether it's alive or slaughtered, if it's blemished, that would make sense. Fair enough. Then you're dealing with an issue, and our main question arises is that even though it's your possession while alive, if unblemished, in the fact if somebody damages it, that they have to make financial restitution to you so that you can have another ox to sacrifice. It's still designated for the temple. So we still don't understand this Mishnah that says that you can, a Kohen can sell an unblemished ox while it's alive. Does that make sense? It doesn't say the owner of the ox. It says a Kohen. So what is the Kohen doing selling it? I'm giving you a clue here, guys, because he's meant to take it to the temple to sacrifice it. It says a Bechor may be sold by the Kohen in an unblemished state while it is alive, and the Kohen may betroth the woman with it. We're not talking about the individual, so that's already in an unblemished state. It's consecrated. Okay, how can a Kohen sell it when it's meant for temple sacrifice? It's not his to. He can eat from it after it's been sacrificed, but how can he sell it? Any of you guys did the learning on Shabbos?
I did cover this, but I don't recall this. It's tricky,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
It doesn't
tricky.
seem
That's
to-
why we're doing it.
It sounds illegal, really.
Okay, good. So at least you hear the question, and you're not expected to know it a week later. That's why I'm here to serve you guys and do my job and teach you. All right.
maybe
So
you
guys,
found a latent defect after the fact.
no. We're talking about unblemished. It's clear it's unblemished.
Oh, he sells
Yeah.
unblemished ox.
No, listen, if there's a blemish, Kevin, you're right. Then the Kohen may betroth the woman with it, whether it's alive or slaughtered, because it doesn't make a difference. It can't go into the temple. Guys, if the session gets cut, we might need another 10 minutes, and that's it. Because we need to finish, but we're almost done.
I give up.
I would say that the Kohen's not allowed to do it. It's a problem.
Okay. Arthur, put the share on record. I need to just move the cat a sec. No, it's minding its own business. You can unrecord. It's fine. It's minding its own business. Okay, it's on the table. Its tail's flicking. All right. So let me just give you a clue. Rav Nachman said firstly, let me just tell you what the procedure is. Is that say Arthur, are we back on record, buddy?
Yes, you're back on record.
In Ma'aser Sheni, chapter 1, verse 2, the Mishnah discusses a Bechor, the firstborn male of a kosher species of domestic animal, and the law is the owner must give a Bechor to the Kohen, who in turn is obligated to sacrifice it in the temple. After throwing its blood on the altar and offering up its designated parts, the Kohen is allotted the remainder of the meat, obviously with the owner, and he must eat it within the walls of Jerusalem. Now, this preceding verse only applies if the Bechor is unblemished. If the animal is blemished, it's given to the Kohen, but he does not offer it on the altar. He may slaughter it outside the temple and eat it anywhere. Okay. So now we understand how the process works. But now we've got a problem. What about the unblemished animal that the Kohen is given in order to sacrifice? How can he take it and use it for his own purposes that the owner gave him in order to propose to a woman with it? And Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Bar Avuha, they did not teach this ruling permitting the sale of a live Bechor, except in regard to a Bechor nowadays. For since it's not fit for sacrifice, the Kohanim retain monetary rights in it. But during the time that the temple is standing, when the Bechor is fit for sacrifice, the Kohen is not able to sell it. Okay, so that solves that mystery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Damon, just say the last point again to repeat, please.
Okay, so it's saying, listen, you can't, in a case where the temple's still standing, if it's unblemished, you can't sell it. The coin can't sell it.
Yeah.
It's destined for sacrifice. But where the temple's not standing, the Kohen can sell it and make use of it and eat it. You can either because there's no temple. There's no temple.
You can't do sacrifices.
Yeah.
Unless the temple's standing. Okay.
Yes. But there seems to be a bit of a problem. What's the problem? I'll tell you now. Is the Gemara continues. Just let me finish this, Gav. I promise you I'll deal with your problems. I promise you. The Gemara continues recounting the Amoraic discussion regarding the Mishnah by citing a challenge raised by Rav Nachman's explanation. Okay? So, and Rava challenged the explanation of Rav Nachman on the basis of the previous mentioned brisa, and I'm going to explain it to you. And he will commit a treachery against Hashem and against his fellow. So we say, okay, hang on a second. This wasn't a case where while the animal was alive, it was considered to be the ox of his fellow because it's a Kodashim Kalim, it's a lower sacrifice of lesser holiness. But he committed a treachery against Hashem because this is meant to be in a case where the animal is going to be destined for sacrifice. So we're saying, hang on a second, when this brisa said it's the ox of his fellow, at the point where it's his fellow's ox, we're not sure why you can't use it. Because what would happen here? Say this was for a false oath. Say I gave you a special ox to take to the temple on my behalf. And then I come to you and say, where's the ox? And you said to me, but you never gave it to me. I said, you're lying. Of course I gave it to you. You were meant to take it to the temple. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So then there's a court case that comes. And what happens is he has to give 1/5. He has to replace the ox and give 1/5 of the money for a false oath. Okay, false oath. Plus, he has to sacrifice an ashram offering, because he made a false oath. So here we're clearly talking about temple times. Does that make sense? So we're saying, hang on a second. It doesn't seem to be talking about after temple times. It seems to be talking about during temple times. And this can be found in Teruma 8a. Okay, it's Rashi's commentary. So we want to understand this and answer the question. So it says, this is the words of Rav Yosef Haglili. It is evident from the brisa that Kodashim Kalim, of which a Bechor is an example, are considered the property of their possessor, even during the time that the temple is standing. So then we got to see how the Gemara answers it. And from what my memory tells me, one of the issues is it's not yours. In other words, if somebody damaged your ox, it's yours in the sense that they have to replace it. If you damage your own ox that you consecrated and you used the wording, this is my ox, Rashi, and I'm going to sacrifice it, Rashi said you have to make a replacement. If you said I'm going to give an ox and you weren't specific, you might not have to. But in other words, it's to protect against other people damaging your property for lesser holiness sort of consecrated items. So they have to make restitution in that particular case. But they're still, in the temple times, they're still not for you to sell. Why? Because it's going in an unblemished state. They offer their sacrifices on the altar. And Ravina responded, the brisa refers to a Bechor. Okay, so that's one of the issues. But Ravina has a different answer. And his answer is as follows. If you want to say that according to Rav Galili, that's true, that you can technically sell it before, because the rabbis and Rabbi Galili are holding in two different opinions. The rabbis seem to hold that because it's going to be designated for sacrifice, you can't partake in selling it. And Rav Galili says, until the time at which it's sacrificed, it's your possession, and you can sell it. This is what it's implied. Are you with me? He doesn't hold by that. So Ravina has got a different response. Ravina says the brisa refers to a Bechor born outside the land of Israel. And in accordance with the opinion of Rav Shimon, it said, if a Bechor animal came from outside the land of Israel to the land in an unblemished state, they are offered as sacrifices on the altar. So this implies that if they came into the land of Israel, yes, you sacrifice them, but they shouldn't be brought, he said. Initially, they should not be brought. So there are two issues that came about here with unblemished animals, right? According to the rabbis. Firstly, that today it doesn't apply because you don't do sacrifices. And secondly, the allocation of unblemished animals only occurs if it was the firstborn male animal to a kosher animal that was born within the land of Israel. Or if you brought it to the land, but you don't have to bring it to the land of Israel to sacrifice the Bechor. You're not obligated to. It's not like the three regalim festivals that you come to Jerusalem. You get what I'm saying? And if you're in the middle of Babylon, you don't have to bring, there's no obligation to bring the firstborn. So you don't have to bring it. So therefore it applies. It's the same rule as if there was no temple standing. Okay? Since a Bechor outside the land of Israel is not destined for sacrifice, it's considered the property of the Kohen and may be sold. So what is you saying here is it's still not yours as the owner of the ox. You have to give it to the Kohen. And then the Kohen can either eat the animal or he can sell it. Does that make sense? And get the benefits? But it's not fit for sacrifice because it's outside of the land of Israel or the temple is no longer standing. Now, I just want to cover one or two issues quickly. The first issue is that it's evident from Ravina's response that he understood Rav Nachman to have stated his explanation of the Mishnah, even according to the opinion of Rav Yosef Haglili. That is, he understood that Rav Nachman to mean that even Rav Yosef Haglili maintains that an unblemished Bechor may be sold only nowadays or outside the land of Israel. But during the time of temple service or in the land of Israel, even a Bechor can't be sold. It's only saying it's your particular ox, so that if somebody damages your ox or you damage your ox, you have to replace it. But you do not have the right to sell it at